can't think of anything worse than losing a child. A previous guest on the show, award-winning actor Jason Watkins, talked on this podcast about losing his 2.5-year-old daughter Maudie to sepsis. The pain must be unbearable. Child Bereavement UK is a quite brilliant charity that supports children, young people, parents and families when either a child grieves or a child dies. For the last 3 years, my daughters and I have had the privilege of singing at their annual carol concert in December, and the outpouring of thanks from parents and families about how child bereavement has supported them and continues to support them in the worst of all circumstances is truly humbling, moving, and inspiring. If you know of someone in these circumstances who needs their help, or if you'd like to support the work that they do, either by donating or giving your time, please contact them via their website, www.childbereavementuk.org. Every penny and every effort will make a difference. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Bandwidth Conversations, a podcast that finds out about the stories and journeys of artists, performers and rock stars of life. Picture a body cut in two. The torso belongs to one person, the lower half to another. A man strapped to a helicopter blade, which when the blades accelerate decapitates him. A man tied up, lying on his back face up, mouth open, desperate to catch water, because his face has been coated with a chemical that in the presence of water will burn a hole in his skin. These are scenes of pain and torture. They are gruesome, twisted and dark, and they are scenarios my guest today has come up with to make us sit on the edge of our seats whilst biting our nails as we watch in horror and enthrall. He is an award-winning writer and director and has created some of the most gripping on-screen entertainment of the last 2 decades. His work includes The Bridge, Midnight Sun, Shadow Play, and Six Souls. Given the subject matter of his creations and sitting across from me today, he is also looking remarkably friendly and normal, which I'm quite relieved to see. But I am absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to talk today to Måns Mårlind. You were born in Vallentuna.
Vallentuna, yes, suburb to Stockholm, yeah.
How would people have described you as a child?
I had a sweatshirt as a child. That was my favorite sweatshirt. And it said, "Here comes," and then in big letters, "trouble." And I think that kind of summed me up. My children up too, I think.
Okay, all of them?
Yeah, a lot of energy, which is good, I think, because you got to have it all the way to the end. So the more energy you start off with, the better.
Did you have an inkling, or anyone around you, that you had this just extraordinarily fertile imagination?
I started to cultivate my imagination in the libraries, and I read so much. And that was really where I spent most of my time as a kid. I was never really into sports or anything. After my military service, I was been a runner, but I never been into sports. But reading was a big thing. And then I wanted to create my own stories. So I think I wrote my first book when I was 12, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a book, but it was a book. Yeah, I mean, it was 30 pages. But for a 12-year-old,
That's a
it was
lot.
massive. It was called Hunting Season, Jaktsäsong. And it was about these old army fellows who goes away to a cabin, and one of them is a killer. I was very into Agatha Christie at the time, I think. So, yeah.
Okay. And did you like horror stories as you were growing up? Was that something that you were into?
Yeah, I write and direct. And the thing is that there was one film that really made me become a filmmaker. And it wasn't one of those big, good films like a Kurosawa or Bergman or a Fellini movie. It was Friday the 13th, Part 2. Shit movie, but it changed my life because I was 11 or 12 when I saw it. And I was in a cinema and I snuck in. And I wasn't supposed to be there. And it was
Did you sneak in with a friend, or were you on your own?
With a friend.
Or?
And we saw it and we were terrified. And then I saw the names at the end of the film, the titles.
Yeah.
And I realized that these are the people that made this film. So you can have this actually as a profession. That's when I started thinking I want to become a filmmaker. Because I want to do this, whatever they did. And I think a lot of men, not women necessarily, but a lot of male filmmakers start off in horror films, making their own, and the fascination of it, I think. And also it's very simple to make your own horror films because you just need some blood and a POV camera and then you're set. But it's very hard to do good drama with your friends when they're 13. And then you evolve. a little bit at least. And you start watching the good films. But my way into this craft, this art, was Friday the 13th. Yeah, part 2.
Part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
And you have this long-standing collaboration and friendship with Bjorn Stein.
Yeah.
And I read that you met each other when you were about 8 or 9. Is that right?
Yeah, no, so it was me and Bjorn who went to the same film.
Oh, okay. So the two of you snuck in.
Yeah. So that was how we started. Because I'm from Stockholm and he's from the west coast of Sweden. But we have the country house at the same little village. So we were summer friends. And that's where we snuck in. It was really like Cinema Paradiso. We snuck into this old rerun theater and we saw all these old movies. And that's how we started cultivating our love for film. And then when we were 26, 27, because I've been in America, we decided, let's try to do this together. Because we got a script on the same day. It was a novella film called Disco Kung Fu, which was homoerotic Kung Fu movie with disco set in the suburbs of Sweden. Really cool. I loved it. And I got it sent from Swedish television, which is the equivalent of BBC. And Björn was sent same script from the producer. So we realized this must be a sign that we should try to do this together. And then we started this collaboration, which lasted, I don't know how many series and films, but a lot. And it turned out to be really, really good. Our collaboration of this, how good the stuff is, I don't know.
Really good.
Yeah.
And when they say never do business with friends, how have you managed to make it work? Or what is it about the two of you that makes it work so well?
I think you either do it with a sibling. That's very common when you do this, because you need to have the same taste. You can't just be pals, because we noticed that since we were so small, it was almost like we were brothers. Yeah. That's why. Because the thing is, you have to be able to say, in this scene, I want the sound of the mosquito. You remember that weird kid when we were playing tennis? Yeah, that's how this mosquito should sound like. You need to have the same taste. Then me and Björn had totally different ways of directing to go about things. But when he did his thing, I was sometimes, what the hell is he doing? But I knew he wasn't ending up where I wanted it to. So we both had the same goals. Because when we did direct, we don't do it anymore, actually. But when we did it every second day.
Okay, so you would be in charge one day, and then would you then be off the set the next day?
The thing is, with this film, Disco Kung Fu, which actually was shot by Linus Sandgren, who got an Oscar now for La La Land.
Oh!
And I had a beer with him a couple of weeks ago, and he's shooting Dune 3 now. It's the biggest show in town.
Yeah.
So he shot Disco Kung Fu, and it looks really nice. But the thing is, me and Björn, we realized that usually the divide is someone take care of the actors and some take care of the technique. But we both love both. So how are we going to do this? So we decided to flip a coin. The producer flips a coin the day before the shoot. And then whoever wins gets the first day and the other person takes the second day. So the first day, if I win, then I'm the director of the day. And he's just my best buddy, as we called it, who's sitting next like an extra script supervisor.
Okay.
And then at the end of the day, we switch. So Björn is going to direct the next day and I'm going to be his best buddy. And what turned out to be really good here was, for us in the beginning, making films really hard. And it made us very strong and confident. And sometimes I think for the bad part of it, later on, maybe too strong. Because we came in like...
together.
Yeah. But in the beginning, it was really good. And then also that thing about sometimes when something happened, I remember when we shot our first American movies, one of the producers fired another producer of the show. It was complete Hollywood mess. And I remember Björn was directing and I dealt with all of that because I was the best buddy. End of the day, Björn said, "Oh, that was a great day." And I said, "You have no fucking idea what I've been through, but very good that you got the shots." So the collaboration was really very, very good. And I spoke to a French director now who's wanting to do the similar thing. And I was telling him all the ups and downs of this. But I would not recommend it to anyone if you just known each other since you were 20, 25. You really need to be way back. Yeah.
My son, Henry, for a while, he wanted to be a film director. And then we went to NYU and met this lovely guy who's studying there called Carl Kurtzy. And he was so passionate about it. And he was taking every class available. And then in the evenings, he was being a runner on different film sets. And Henry came away and said, "Oh, I'm not that keen, so I'm never going to make it." It is such a competitive space.
Well, it is competitive, but also the eyes are wide open. You see directly this guy or this girl, they fucking got it. So bring them aboard. Because it's not like it's super difficult if you just work your ass off and have some talent, hopefully.
You went to Stockholm University to start with. And was that to study film at that point?
None in my family really has done anything like this. They're all academics or something like that. So becoming a filmmaker, I didn't really know how to do that. So I thought I have to study for it because everybody's an academic, so I have to study to become a filmmaker. Right. Today, I think it's kind of like filmmaker becomes you get a camera and then you shoot and you make a film. No, I have to study. So I made my own curriculum, which was I studied film theory, which I don't regret. It was great. And I studied psychology because I thought I need to be able to talk to actors. So that's psychology. And then economics.
Wow, that's clever to think of that.
Yeah, but 19 years old trying to figure things out. And then economy because I need money for my films, which was a mistake because it was so horrible. And actually, that's what you have a producer for. But I did that. And at the same time, I studied at a simpler hands-on school called Stockholm Film School, where you got to learn how to use the tools more or less.
And after that, did you go straight to the American Film Institute?
Yeah.
And just in terms of, well, fun and learning, how was your experience at the American Film Institute?
It was amazing. It was amazing. And I don't know how many young wannabe filmmakers I've sent off to that school after talking to them. Because it was amazing, because it wasn't a master level. So you had to have a bachelor, I think, or worked so much in the industry that you actually knew what you were doing. So people were either directors, cinematographers, editors, producers, production designers. So everybody knew what they were doing. Most film schools, everybody wants to be the director. But then after a while, you realize, that's maybe not for me. But it was like you made 3 films in 1 year. Each film was 20, 25 minutes long. And then when you didn't make your own movies, you crewed on your peers' movies. And so all you did for a year was filmmaking. And then because it's American Film Institute, you have William Friedrich, Steven Spielberg, Fincher, everybody came and talked. So you were right in the middle of something. And I went there because I didn't get into the Swedish Drama Institute, which is the beautiful, very renowned place, but they only take 3 people every second year. And I didn't get in. It's really small because it's such an expensive course. I'm fastidious, I'm not sure if that's the word, but I think they never turn up to be any productive directors coming from there. So I'm actually very happy that I got a no there. So I got into the American Film Institute instead. It was very, very good.
And then did you stay in America afterwards, or did you then come back to Sweden?
I stayed there for a year. And I worked as assistant director on commercials, music videos. And I also was working as a reader. I was reading 2 scripts a day, writing a report and sending it off.
Oh, wow. Okay, so really varied.
Yeah, but I remember when I collected my first paycheck. I think they still have checks in America, by the way. And I was so proud because it was my first paycheck and I earned in a job that I earned myself. And I was in the most competitive town in the world for this. So yes. I was so proud.
And then after that, you started work as a writer, coming back to Sweden. And there were a whole bunch of shows that you were writing or co-writing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of them. But in the back of your mind, as you were doing all this writing, was the goal to be a director still?
Yeah, I remember I think a lot of young filmmakers can understand this. I hated not being able to say I was a director because in my heart I was a director. But since I haven't made any professional things, I didn't have the right to say that. And that was horrible, I remember. Yeah. But I'm blessed with the thing that I can also write. So that was a way to get into the system. And I went back to Sweden because this was a long time ago, So very few Swedes had gone to Hollywood. When I came back, I was the guy who'd been in Hollywood. And that was a big thing. So I got a job and everybody was interested. And after writing, you get into the system and then maybe you want to assist direct this thing. And then that's how it works.
And so what series of events led you to then your directorial debut with the fantasy thriller Storm?
So I actually was shooting a series in Gothenburg, west coast of Sweden, called The Sixth Day, which I think was actually really, it looks like shit, don't see it. But it was super, super gothic. It was a long-running series. And then they asked me, this is someone with balls, I say, this producer, who didn't know me, but she liked me and liked my...
Liked your work? Or...
Yeah, I think my attitude, maybe. And she said, we're going to do the final show, the final season of this show. You have carte blanche, kill how many people you want, do whatever you want.
And so writing and directing.
Yeah. So I wrote and directed that. And I was actually at the time super happy with it. I'm one of those directors who are actually happy with so much of my works. Really good directors, they like this. So I'm maybe probably not very good. I like this like photo album, like, I like this. Oh, I like this. I like what I've done here. No, so the thing is that I was totally worn out doing all this. So I went to my country house on the West Coast and tried to calm down, but I couldn't. So I started to write. And I wanted to try that, what Sartre said, just write, don't think, just see what happens, don't censor. So I started writing it. Then I had written the first act and half of the second act in, I think, 1 or 2 days. And then I sent it off to Björn and said, I think this is actually a good film. And he liked it. And then I wrote the last part in 3 weeks. And then we had a script. And it became that thing.
I thought you directed Storm. I didn't realize you wrote it as well.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Yeah. And you've managed to do that in such a short space of time.
I am a very fast writer. Once I get the idea, I'm pretty structured. So Storm was special because I wrote everything like that, like, ugh. But everything else, I actually tend to be very structured, writing down scenes by scenes on little notes. I mean, I write the pilot for TV in 5 to 6 days.
Wow.
So, yeah, but the material sinks in me. And then it's like when you press the button, someone said, good writing is not making things up. It's about reporting because you are somewhere and you're just reporting what you're seeing. That's the zen of writing. Usually when I write films, I hit that vein, and that's actually really wonderful.
And then you're off.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it won several awards. One was Best Director at Puchon Fantastic Film Festival. As your starter writing and directing, that was wonderful.
It was actually really funny because it was George Romero who made Night of the Living Dead and all those zombie films. He's the grandfather of zombies. He was the head of that festival. So, and I grew up with his films, so that was really, really wonderful actually to get the award from him.
Okay, well, sadly, we're not going to be able to cover everything because you've done such a lot.
I think actually I haven't done much at all. So much of my time is passes and things that don't happen. So when you say that I've done a lot, like maybe I have, but I don't feel that.
It seems like a lot to me. Anyway, 2010 was Shelter, and if you're in America, it was called Six Souls. It's a horror starring Julianne Moore and Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. And I watched it the other day and I had to really steel myself because I'm not good with horror films.
Okay.
And as I watched the credits at the beginning, it said the producers are the same producers as the ones who created The Ring. Yeah. And my heart sank because I found that had weeks of being terrified after watching that. And my son Henry, who's massively into horror films, and so he's got this one lined up now, said, oh yeah, The Ring was really good, but it wasn't that scary. And I thought, oh my gosh.
Well, then this was the drive in the park, I think. I mean, The Ring is scary, I think. That's a good film.
I was scared by this. I really enjoyed it, even though I had to close my eyes every so often. Julianne Moore was just brilliant. She's brilliant, isn't she? And Jonathan Rhys-Meyers was so clever in how he flips from one character to it.
Worked really hard. Yeah, it worked really hard.
So was this your first film with highly acclaimed international actors?
Yeah.
And so my husband downstairs has got the confidence of a lion. So he just want to go into it. It's just great. Everyone says to him, come and do this. He thinks, of course, I'm going to do it brilliantly. And if I get an opportunity, I think, oh, well, will I be good enough? When you get a job like that, did you think, great, I'm up to this? Do you worry?
Maybe I'm a little bit stupid as your husband, like really, really confident. And it starts with, you get a script. Storm, which we talked about, got us a manager and an agent in America. And then when you have those, then they send you scripts and then you read them. And then finally, this one we liked. We met the producers and then we clicked. And then it's all about getting the actress.
Did you know that you wanted Julianne Moore?
No, I think we tried a couple of others before. My partner is an actress and she said, you're never number one. You're always going to be 4, 5, 6 or whatever. And this is the case with this film too. I think we thought about having her younger maybe or something like that. But then someone mentioned Julianne Moore, and we're like, no way. I mean, she's never going to do it. She's too good for us. Then she read the script, she liked it, and then we had a meeting in New York. I was really nervous. It was my first rock star meeting. And then after 20 seconds, she realized that she's lovely. Directing her was very often that you're watching the shot and then, oh, yeah, cut. Because it's like watching a movie. It's like you get really sucked in. It's like she can't have, I don't know how to say that in English, like a false dialogue where it sounds off, you know? She's incapable of that. Everything sounds just perfect. So she was wonderful to work with. Then it was a disaster because we didn't have a studio attached. So halfway through the film, someone wanted to buy it. I think it was Paramount. And then the producer says, no, we wait until the film is done because then we're going to get even more money. And the problem when we were done, the film was all edited and done, then that real estate thing happened in America.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was a bloodbath in the
collapsed.
film industry. And it's like no films were bought. And suddenly we had a film that nobody wanted to buy. So it took like, I don't know, a year and a half. And we had a film with Julianne Moore that didn't get sold. But then, what's his name? This horrible man who's doing jail time, who has the best film CV in the world, producer, the rapist.
Harvey Weinstein.
Exactly. So he picked it up. So I met him on the beach in Cannes, and he said, I want this film. And everybody said, he's going to recut your film, it's going to be slaughtered. And he didn't change a single frame, actually, which I was very happy with. And yeah, so then it got released. But I don't know. The thing is with a film, I'm not happy with it. I think I told you that. I'm not happy with the third act. I think it doesn't deliver. I think the first act is really good. I don't think it's scary enough.
And I'm not the person to tell about that. I thought it was way scary enough. 2011 is The Bridge. You're one of the creators and writers. As I said before, we're on episode 7. We're watching 7
super.
and 8 tonight. Mm-hmm. It has been a huge success. It's been aired in over 100 countries. It was all everyone was talking about at the time when it came out. Can you take us through your involvement?
Me and Björn had just done a show called Snapphanar, which it was like Robin Hood in Sweden, based on true stories. And the producers had an idea because they had a financial setup. Very often, good ideas come from horrible setups. And this was the setup. We can get Swedish and Danish TV channels to work together maybe. And we have an idea for that, they said. And the idea was about security guards taking drugs over the border. And I fell asleep halfway through the 2 or 3 sentences they pitched. And I said, not interested. It sounds so boring. And then they said, why don't you come up with something? Can you do that? And then I remember I was walking on the ice, a long walk with my dog on the ice in Sweden. And I suddenly had that boom idea of a bridge, 2 body cut in half. Turns out that there's 2 different women and it's right on the border. So the police force needs to collaborate. And I pitched that to the producers the following day. And they said, we can sell this in Cannes tomorrow. And they said, but what happens? And I said, I have no idea, but it's a good setup. So they said yes. And then me and Björn and Hans, 3 guys, we started to write the storyline and create these characters, Saga and Martin.
Yeah, who are just fabulous characters.
Yeah, I remember we wrote it actually for that actor, Martin, because we just worked with him in this costume thing. He was at the time bad boy in Denmark. He always played criminals. So he said, no one's going to believe me playing a cop because I'm bad and I'm dirty and nobody likes me. I said, no, you're a teddy bear. Promise us. I think that
yes,
really,
it came across exactly that.
Yeah, and I think that it works really well. And then the thing I remember that is very different from when we wrote it was that in the initial storyline, Saga, maybe I'm breaking something if you haven't seen it, but she dies anyway in the end.
Oh.
No, because you know there's other series. So she dies in the end. I remember the producer saying, I don't think she should die. And I said, no, it's very important she dies because it's the whole story is, we had all this passionate declaration about why she needs to die. But then I think there might be more seasons. I think people actually might like this series. And I was like, okay. So she got to live and that was a good call.
And you were asked to direct it?
No. So me and Björn were going to direct it. But then The Bridge took almost 5 years to get made. And most things take many years because there's always, in the beginning, yes, 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 and then no, 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 and then you continue to struggle, and it takes years. So in the meantime, we suddenly got another American movie. So we said we're going to make this, and then suddenly, as that happened, the green light for Bridge came. And in a way, I'm really sorry for that because I really wanted to have directed, because there are things, directorial things that I would made a little bit different. But who cares? It's a really loud show. But still, I wanted to have done that. But we got to do a film in America, which was a horrible experience, but still an experience.
And that was Underworld Awakening.
Yeah.
And that was starring Kate Beckinsale, who went to the same college as me at university.
Really?
That's a very, tenuous claim to fame for me. And it was the fourth installment of the Underworld series. Yeah. And your film was the highest grossing film of the whole series.
Actually, yes.
You directed it, with Bjorn. And your comments when we had this email exchange were insane budget, worst experience ever.
Yeah.
So why?
And well, the thing is, the more money that gets on the table, the more assholes gets around the table. And most of them are not filmmakers.
Okay.
People who want to make sure that their money get back. And I think even though we made, by this time, I think we made 3 or 4 features and a couple of TV series, maybe as many. I think we were still super naive with how things worked in Hollywood. We thought that it was about the filmmaking, and it's not. It's about selling a product. When you're on this level, there are filmmaking, of course, going on there. That's great. But when you make the 4th installment of a franchise, we realized that everything was song and dance. And our pitch from the beginning, everybody loved it. And then we got the job, and then said, but, guys, you can't do that. You have to do this. It was a very painful, it was like shooting a commercial. As a director, you know what that means. If you're shooting a commercial with a horrible agency and a horrible client, and that's what it was like, but instead of 1 day of shooting, it was 80 days of shooting. Yeah, it was really, really hard. And you had producers who called. I remember the 2nd or 3rd day of shooting, one of the producers calls, and he says, I've seen the rushes, the dailies, and it looks like shit. Acting is shit. The show, that fucking production design shit in the sea, nothing works. I want to come up and direct it myself.
Sorry, who is this guy?
One of the main producers. And I remember thinking Ed Wood in the film, well, tomorrow's going to be better. And then at the end, when the editing was done, and we had our first screening in Hong Kong, and it was going through the roof, he came up and hugged and said, that thing that I did? I do that with every director on 3rd day. So that was his thing of just putting the fear in you. And that's how it's run. And there's no trust. It's really, really unnice. And it was actually me and Björn were very close to leaving the project. After 3 weeks of shooting, we're like, this is huge. This film, the budget was $80 million or something like that. And it was a great opportunity, blah, blah. But we said, we're destroying ourselves and we're destroying our souls. So fuck them. Let's leave. And we called the youngest producer on the set, who we kind of liked actually, and said, so here's the deal. You have 1 day to get another director because we're leaving. And then he said, I'm coming over. So he came over, had 2 bottles of wine and said, you don't understand anything how this works, he says. And he said, this is Rome. You're so naive. You think this is about the filmmaking. What's your problem? And we said, well, our problem is this guy. And we mentioned this guy. And he said, yeah, he's fucking you, right? Yeah. Okay, so if I take care of him, you tell the brass in LA how great I am, and then, okay. So we did that, and then, voila, it was working. We had no idea how intricate, how clever you need to be, because we just came with our vision and we came with our filmmaking. But that was the least that we needed. You hear that all the time about directors in LA who come, and they haven't prepared. They haven't done their storyboards. They're shooting big action sequence, and they're like, oh, what are we going to do today? Because they are so hurt by this system. And we were the opposite. We came, Charlie Brown, and everything was set. But after we took that, it was very informative. This is shit you don't learn in film school. That producer, I never worked with him again. I chatted with him on the phone a couple of times, but he really, really helped me understand how you maneuver the beast, which is the beast. I realized that after talking to that, like I said, well, what do you want to do? I don't care. I don't want to shoot this anymore the way I planned, so you shoot instead. And then they become terrified. and you win.
And then you can do what you want.
Yeah. It was horrible. That's why I don't want to make films in America anymore. The big studio movies, it's really corrupt and degraded.
The next year, it sounds like you did the complete reverse in terms of filming, because you directed Shed No Tears.
Yeah.
And that's a Swedish film, and it's based on the songs of singer-songwriter Håkan Hellström.
Yeah, great.
And you were the director and the producer on that one. And it was very romantic, very funny. I loved the first scene. I was not expecting him to do that in the church. This film was nominated for 9 Guldbagge Awards, which is the Swedish equivalent of the Academy Awards.
Yeah, I think we won a couple also.
Yeah, you did. Best director, I think, and best film.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Total departure from the film before. Was that almost in reaction to Awakening?
Yeah, it was. This artist, Håkan, he is like a Swedish, I don't know, Springsteen, Dylan.
I've been listening to some of his music and it's really lovely. And there's one song which I just love the lyrics, after Too Late for Edelweiss.
Oh, that's a beautiful song. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's in the film. Yeah. No, he is like, you can't have a Swedish summer without Håkan. It's actually part of Sweden right now. It's culture stamped. Anyway, he usually sings about, he has recurring characters in his songs. So he sings about Paul, he sings about Lina, and he sings about Johnny. So we thought about how to put them all together in a film. I remember telling our agents, not manager, I still have the same manager, great guy. But we have the agents at CAA telling them, we're going to go to Sweden now and make this film. And they were like, come again? Because Underworld Awakening was a huge success. And so Thor is, of course, the next step.
Oh, gosh.
It's like, no, we're done with this and we need to lick our wounds and we need to do some real filmmaking. And we're doing this for no money at all in Sweden. And they thought it was bad. And because of that, we broke with them, actually, the agents. Because we thought that you have to represent us. We're not there to work for you. And if you don't understand us, then we will never be able to work. So we left, actually, this very, very big agency, which everybody thought was stupid, but I don't regret it at all. But we made that film, and it was one of those things that was really the work of pure passion, and everybody really, really gave everything. And the funny thing is that the monster movie Underworld Awakening, we learned so much from that. And I would say editing and pace. So we attacked this romantic coming-of-age film with the same relentlessness as we did with the ultra-violence of Underworld. And it made it like the roller coaster ride of it, so to speak. The rhythm, the pace worked really well. And I think if we wouldn't have made Underworld Awakening, the film would have been longer, slower, and not as good. So you learn from everything.
That was a wonderful film. I loved that film.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy with that, actually. It made a lot of people very happy. I remember I was in a cafe buying coffee in Stockholm. There was this woman behind me, and she asked, didn't you create the bridge? And I said, yeah, I did. And she says, I'm working with people with, she said Asperger, but, autistic kids. No, actually not kids, grown-ups. They watched the bridge together and said, so what did Saga do wrong today?
So good.
Yeah, I was like, that's the best fucking review I had in my entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, I made that for you. That also made me, I was shooting a thing called Swoon, Swedish thing, but I was shooting in Budapest. And the driver turns around and looks at me, who's going to drive me during the production. And he says, did you make Underworld Awakening? He said. And I said, yeah, move on. Let's go. Like, no, it's the best movie I ever made. And I said, no, it's not. It's actually pretty bad, but cheers. And then he said, no, it's the best movie I ever made. And he started quoting each scene. I told him, I made this film just for you. It's your film. And it actually made me feel really good about it.
Saga is such an interesting character.
It didn't begin, let's have an autistic main character. It became like, let's have someone who's really awkward in situations and is a truth sayer and cannot lie, really. So that's how it started. And then it became more like, I remember when I started writing the action, it's like, but why is she? What's her deal? I mean, the person, I understand the pitch, but who is she? And then, oh, no, but she must be autistic. That's the thing.
Okay.
And then Yeah, I think everyone has some kind of ADHD or something in the industry.
Yeah, we're all on that spectrum somewhere.
So, I mean, writing someone who's autistic feels very close to home. Yeah.
Okay. 2016, Midnight Sun.
Yeah.
You created it, you wrote it, you co-directed it with Bjorn, you produced it. Everything. I watched it in one go on
wonderful.
last Saturday, and it was one of the best days I can remember because I just loved it. And I had a holiday in Kiruna several years back.
Oh, wow.
So when I saw it was set in Kiruna, I thought, oh my goodness, this is just can't get any better. And I was with this lovely friend of mine, Cecilia Swenson, who also knows Dominique Pleer, who is the wonderful lady who put us in touch. For those people who haven't watched it, it's just, you have to watch it. And it's addictive viewing. It's a dark tale of a serial killer. And I'm telling you this and you know because you wrote it.
And then what happened? A serial killer? Are you
I don't know why I'm telling you. For those who haven't seen it, it is a serial killer and he is killing off members of the community who have been keeping a secret. But there was so much great stuff. I love the relationship between the two investigators, Anders and Kaina. It was so rich in plot and twists. There were so many threads going on and they were all intertwining and you managed to play them out so elegantly. Could you just talk us through from that first kind of germ of an idea, also the timeline that it takes to write something like this, to research it, to then make it for it to come out?
Yeah. So actually, you often hear the expression Nordic noir, and being part of it, we never had a meeting, we Swedes and Danes, and like, we creating this, it just became something. Because we all had the same mother's milk kind of way, I think, and suddenly it turns out, and then someone puts a label on it. I get the question many times, what is it? And I think one of the things that it is that it's always have a social context, that it's trying to say something about society. I think that The Bridge, many people don't like to hear that, but I really think, for me, it's a very social democratic film, a series, because it's really about someone saying, look, we need to take care of each other. We need to do this together. We have to stop living in hypocrisy. We need to take care of our poor, our mentally handicapped, and all of that. And the thing is that with the Midnight Sun, I heard this Samis are Indians. And I heard a Sami performer saying, in between the songs she was talking, this was way up in the north, she was talking about her people and how repressed they were, and I realized how ignorant I was, and I didn't really know about that. And then suddenly we got a call from Canal Plus saying that they want to do a thing, and they had an idea. Same thing as Bridge. Idea was really bad. And I said, wait, here's an idea. Because I wanted to say something about the Sami and how Swedes have been raping them for 400 years and treat them exactly the same story as you feel.
You get all over the world.
Same thing. And I said, let's tell this story. But no one wants to see a story about that, or not a lot of people. So let's always hide it in a crime story. Let's bring in a serial killer, and that's the take. And then very early on, the opening scene came up. And same thing as in The Bridge. It was like an opening that is strong, with this guy tied to a helicopter blade, and then his head explodes because of velocity and so on. And then I had some pictures of young demonstrating Samis who don't look cozy and nice, which they do. They're black. They look like fiends from hell. And I took young women, like really strong-minded, dressed in black garbage bags, really powerful, with reindeers. And I sent that to Canal Plus and said, this is the attitude of the show. And they're like, we love it. But also, I said, this is the kingdom of snow, but we want a princess of sand from it. So that's why we had this Algerian French cop.
Yeah, it's such a cool idea to bring her in.
It's a film about racism, really. It's serious. So she recognized herself there. Then me and Björn wrote the storyline in a month or 3 weeks. And we had a French writer come up and just tell us a little bit. She was French Muslim, and we wanted just to get the backstory correct. So we made it believable and so on. And she helped us with that. I'm very grateful for that.
So when you say you wrote the storyline, that's the plot.
Yeah. So the storyline, I would say, is prose. You write it in prose and you divide it into 3 acts. And then each episode is 7 to 8 pages, and maybe 10 pages. So the whole document of a series of 8 episodes is something between 70 and 80 pages long, A4. And based on that, they liked it. I wrote the first script, and then they need a second script, which is kind of common that you want, because you can be lucky on the first. So you need to write a second to see if it holds. So I wrote the second, and then because of that, we got a green light. It went really fast, the whole thing.
Once you have the storyline mapped out, the prose, I would think that's a really big job to then turn it into a screenplay.
Well, the thing is that depends on how you're rigged in here, I think. Because for me, it takes longer to plot it. Because if you do it in acts, then you come up with, oh no, the turn is here, and then she realizes here, and then she breaks up with him here. And then when you actually write it, you have a very detailed map. If you know how to write, like if you're a marathon runner and you know how to run, then it's kind of simple to write the scenes. In the beginning, it's harder because you have to let each character find their voice. But once you know their voices and everybody speaks differently, I'm talking very personal. Yeah. So then we started production, trying to get actors and so on, scouting, getting locations, and starting with the production design as I'm writing. But I think it's really important, really, it's fucking key that everyone knows before you start production what's going to happen. Very often, this is not the case. And people don't know, am I going to die? Am I going to leave him? Am I going to stay? Because they don't have it. So everybody knew because of the very detailed storyline what was going to happen.
Do you mean that's for actors where they're going to come on board?
Everyone.
Okay.
Filmmaking is such a teamwork. I care so much about the production designer, assistant, or the gaffer. They need to know it. Because when everyone knows, you get gifts, like somebody coming up, I know that this scene is about his father, so I thought about these apples. So maybe we should have these apples in the car. It's like, yeah, beautiful. I haven't thought about it, but it's great. So if you get everyone really involved with your story, and that's about sharing information. And I think a lot of directors are actually the opposite. They want to keep their stuff because they're maybe insecure, or maybe it's a control thing, because giving information is letting go of power. But I think that it always comes back at you. So the more you give, the more you receive. Then the big X factor, every film or every TV series has an X factor. The big, this can fuck us. And for us, it was Layla. We wrote it for Layla, who plays the French detective, but she couldn't speak English. And that was really hard. We went down to France, and I can speak French. Not very good, but I can do it. And she couldn't say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that level. And there was no one else that Canal Plus would accept who was French, Algerian, and a star.
Yeah, she was a real star.
Yeah, she was one of the best actresses I worked with.
But that is a negative, because there is quite a lot of English spoken.
Yeah, it was terrifying. That's also a big thing in filmmaking. It's risk-taking. You have to be able to take the jump and just fucking hope for it. And we did. And sometimes her English wasn't very good, and we had to do it again and so on. But she was working really hard because she didn't not just learn the scenes, she had to learn her English. But she managed to do it. And there was this scene when she's with her son in a cabin, and she's telling him why she left him as a child and so on. And this whole scene is in French. And I was very happy with writing it, but also directing it. I thought it really worked. She kicked ass, and she could do it over and over again. Because sometimes when actor starts crying, you thought that was it. And I said, no, I can do this. And she did. Then I saw the old sound guy. He's dead now. He was crying too. And I said, but you don't speak French. And I said, no, but it doesn't matter because it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really, really nice. It was a good experience.
You won the Best Director, Best Script, and the Audience Award in the Roma Film Festival. Yeah. So, I mean, it was fantastic. As was Shadowplay. And again, you were the writer, you were the director, you were the producer, you were the creator. And what a story you wrote there, because there's so much stuff out there about the Second World War. And this is set in 1946, Berlin. I'm telling you again, just in case you've forgotten. And Berlin is a mess and it's lawless. And I had no idea about any of that. I started watching it thinking, okay, Katie, you're going to watch it critically so you can say something really insightful at the end. And I just enjoyed it so much. I just got so engrossed. I wasn't looking at anything individually. But there was one particular scene that I thought, Oh, that's really good. When Tuppence Middleton, who plays Claire, and she's with her husband in the car, and the driver, who she is not their driver, but they think is the driver, goes around the back and opens up the boot, and you see them arguing, and you see him putting a gas mask, and you think, oh my goodness, that was a touch of brilliance.
Yeah.
And the actors, again, were superb, and I didn't know half of them. So I didn't know Mala Emder, who was
She was
Karen.
unknown. She was fresh
she was
fresh from theatre school, yeah.
Wow, because she had that amazing vulnerability yet steeliness.
This is the casting, I think. It's like you get tapes, and then usually a casting session is if you don't go for a star, then you get tape, somebody's done a reading, and then you ask maybe for a second reading, third reading, you meet the person, and then you sign the deal if it's good. I remember watching Mala, her first take, and I said, okay, search is over, we got her. And I didn't meet her. So yeah, she just nailed it.
And then Sebastian Koch, who was the angel maker, and he was so good at being so serenely nasty.
Yeah.
And Nina Hoss, Elsie Garten, Taylor Kitsch, who was the main character. What gave you the idea for this one?
I wanted to tell a story about Berlin after the war. You always see films about the war or the Cold War, but nothing right after the war. And at the time, which was 6 years ago, I felt the uber-right, the ultra-right was on its way forward. And I wanted to do something and show people this is what happens, guys. This is the result. Unfortunately, my series have failed completely because it's worse than ever. So I always wanted that. And then I went to this place called Max and Moritz in Berlin, which is a bar.
Oh, there's a bar called Max and Moritz.
And I had no idea who Max and Moritz were, who are these two siblings. It's a children's book, the most read children's book in Germany still. They're two rascals who play 7 tricks on their little village. And they're all over this place. And I asked, who are these cartoons? Some say this is the first cartoon ever, actually. I was told the story, and I was like, oh, maybe if they're brothers. And then suddenly it came to me, these are brothers, and I could make a story about Max and Moritz and put them in Berlin, and they're Americans. One of them is a Nazi hunter, and one of them is a cop. So Moritz is the guy who's a Nazi hunter, who he's gone AWOL, and he's crazy. And he hunts Nazis down and kills them in horrible ways, according to this children's book that he and his brother have. He transforms the children's tricks into horrible murders. But the thing was, I remember doing all this research for the show. I felt like when I was writing, but also a little bit when I was directing, I was Moritz. I wanted to take revenge on them. A really nasty feeling, actually. But I was so disgusted with everything. I never researched as much for anything as I did for this show because I was doing it for a German audience. ZDF, which is like the BBC of Germany, they were the first guys on board. And you feel like they know the story so well. So I can't just come in there and say, oh, I'm going to make a cool story about Berlin. I need to know my shit.
Yeah.
I need to be researched. And I really, really did. So therefore, I felt really safe in the material. And so much came. That's why research is so important in your work, I think. And it's like there's this secret group in the series, which is based on a real group called Nakam, which was this Jewish resistance movement that I never heard about. And their goal was to take out 7 million Germans. And they failed, and then they wanted to kill all the SS officers in the Nuremberg. So they poisoned the bread to all the officers there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the Nakam, that main character stumbles upon for a while in the story, they were real. They're in a small part of history's corner, you know, but I wouldn't have known about them if I didn't know my research well enough. At the time, the woman who ran ZDF, she said that this series made her realize that you can only love Germany with a broken heart or something like that.
When you do this research, are you doing this online?
Books. I just love books to begin with. If I weren't a filmmaker, I would be a librarian, I think. I just love books. So I love the idea of having, this is my research books for this project, and they stand here, and I can see that. Actually, when I research, I'm really, really much like being in school. So I read it and then underline. And then after I underlined it, I write it down in my notebook, what's underlined. And then I learn it very well. And then I forget it. It's really good because when the actor's like, why didn't they go there? And then instead of saying, oh, I don't know, the script fucking says so, you really can tell them. And that creates a really good trust on the set that what you're doing is actually, you want to tell something.
Yeah, and wonderful for them that they know all the backstory and can put it into context, and that must help them with creating their roles.
Yeah, the roles, the journeys.
So you made this shadow play, and I got pretty much all the way through Defeated when we had that email exchange, and you said, "Watch shadow play, not The Defeated." Yeah. Netflix then takes it, and then it's complete. It's done.
Yeah.
And so why did the networks then chop it up?
So the thing is that it's complicated because same thing as Shelter. They had a hard time selling the show because it was made without any of the broadcasters or streamers attached.
Okay.
So it was made by cocky producers who says we're going to make a kick-ass thing and then everybody's going to buy it. Then it became this thing which is very common. Now, we don't want history. History is as dangerous to produce as anthologies. Streamers and broadcasters hate this. And then you say, but there is history all over. I know. I don't understand this.
And not this history. You found something that
there
isn't.
It doesn't matter. It's like they are terrified by history because the simple reason is that there's this thing that they don't think that young people wants to see history. So therefore, that's all they want. It's like cigarette sellers. They want young kids. So they had a hard time selling it in America. So then it was recut. I had nothing to do with that.
Is that normal?
It can happen. And the hard thing is that you don't have final cut. I mean, Scorsese has it, Spielberg. I mean, very, 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 very few people have it. So it was recut, different music and so on, and it was called Defeated. While in Europe, in Studio Canal and all those other countries in Europe, shadow play is still existing. So it's a really weird thing. But for me, I think the titles say everything because shadow play implies that it's a moral ambiguity and you don't know what's going on. And the Defeated, this is the Defeated. And it's American, it's simpler. So the Defeated, I don't like it. I think instead of 7.5 hours, it's 6.5 hours. So it's much shorter. And I think a lot of beats that are missing, removed a lot of the love scenes. And I think it actually doesn't make sense because they recut it so much. I fucking hate it.
And that's awful because it's your baby. I mean, you have literally done absolutely everything with it.
Yeah, it's really weird because you write every scene, then you direct every scene, and then you cut it together, and then someone else has recut the scenes.
That must feel really...
No, it's really strange.
Horrible.
And you can say, oh, what a problem you have, what a small problem. Yeah, it might be a small problem compared to other problems, but it is a problem from an artistic point of view. But for example, I remember there's a scene where Mala, this young German actress, who finally gets the boys, the American soldiers raped her. She gets some people to tie them up in 2 chairs in a deserted house. When I shot this, I just wanted this whole thing to be one take. So we follow her up the stairs. She walks around the boys, this young guys, talks to them, and then she starts beating them to death with a lead iron, and we leave the room. And it was a 2-minute long, really complicated shot. I was so happy with it. And then B camera. This is a Steadicam shot. The B camera, shall I roll? And I was like, no, don't roll, because I don't want to cut in this. So we don't need B camera now. I'll roll anyway. Okay, whatever. I said, if you want to roll, who cares? And then in the end, this scene in the Defeated is cut up with these bad B camera shots. Nothing wrong with B camera, but B camera is called B camera for a reason, because it's about maybe getting a shot. So this perfect shot that was really, really, really nasty and delivering as well was cut up. That thing symbolized the whole process for me, or that version of it.
I remember interviewing Bonnie Garmus, who wrote Lessons in Chemistry, this beautiful novel, and that's been a series on television, and they changed in a similar way. They changed a character, and in fact, they changed a whole bunch of things, none of which I thought, having read the book, was for the better. I mean, it's still a lovely series, but it was just, why would you change it when it was perfect already? And she said, I have heart failure. I can't watch it. It's so painful.
Yeah, it is. It is also why I say it's the name of the game. So you can't sit and whine. It just make the next one so perfect they won't be able to do that.
Yeah. A friend of mine, Dr. Christina Maguire, she's a very successful fund manager, but she's also has a PhD in psychology, and she has watched quite a bit of your stuff. And she had a question. She said, a lot of your material is really dark. Does this come naturally to you, or have you decided that this is the space you want to be in and you have to keep pushing yourself to come up with extreme ideas?
No, it comes very natural. I have a very early memory. One of my first memories, I escaped my house when I lived in the suburbs to Stockholm. And my mother found me sitting, staring at in the neighbor's house. They had this huge painting by a Swedish painter, extremely expressive, tongues, eyes, jaws, very expressive. And I was just sitting there staring, and I remember that moment very well. I think it kind of symbolized somehow myself. I'm really drawn to it. Like you were talking about beauty, and I think for me, Nirvana, the voice of Tom Waits, and everything that's broken or cracked, that's where I find beauty. Because I couldn't name a single Taylor Swift song. I couldn't. I don't know them. Everything that is pretty, I'm not attracted to. Because it needs to have edge, it needs to be cracked for me to be beautiful. And that's the same thing with light and beauty. I can't say anything positive or beautiful or lightful unless I have the darkness surrounding it. Because I don't think you see light without darkness. So therefore, I think that I'm very, very, very positive person. And I think you have to be a filmmaker. You have to be naive. I think that's why Japanese cinema I always liked, because it's kind of naive. So therefore, I think that drive in me really mixes well with this obsession with the macabre or the dark.
This boy who is an ex-offender, and I mentor him, and he's actually back in jail, but he's
doing
do you
do that? How do you do that? Because I'm writing a character who's doing that.
I'm actually trustee of this charity called Key for Life, and we help get young offenders into work.
I'd love to know more about that.
Okay, yeah. I'll tell you about it. Now I've been in touch with him for nearly a decade now. He loved horror films, and he said that everything on the television is just too tame because of his own life being in gangs, and he was 13 when he was shot at and his friend died beside him. So he said, I need to have something extra to get me involved. But that's not you.
No. Everything I do, I think I'm pretty extreme. Everything in, like, when I cook, I always go extreme, and everything. I want extra in life, I think. Life is really short, and you just have to squeeze most out of it.
Yeah, you're right. Tell us one secret to writing a good script.
This goes for writing script as well as a book, I think. You have to do your hours. And I think the best thing is, someone said, I think, ass on chair, pen on paper. And no matter what, you have to sit your allotted time by the desk. And sometimes between 9 and 12 or whatever it is. And sometimes nothing happens. And sometimes something happens at the last 5 minutes. But if you hadn't been sitting there for 2 hours and 55 minutes, you wouldn't get those last 5 minutes, which is crucial maybe for the story. So I think that apart from having a good idea, apart from telling something that is important to you, do your time. Then I can say also, it's like, tell a story that is important to you, and don't tell stories that you think people will hear, because then you tell no one's story. But since you care for something, then probably other people will care about it.
And for being a good director?
I think you have to be naked in front of your actors, because you're going to ask them everything. For me, to be close to my actors, I give a lot about myself and so on, because I ask a lot of them to be naked, and they are actually in front of a camera. So I think you have to be compassionate, naked, but you also have to be ruthless, which is not regarding the actors, but regarding producers. Because at the end of the day, people want to say, but do we really have to shoot? Do we really have to do this? No, actually, let's do radio. Because it's really hard to do film. So you have to say, no, we need the camera on a fucking dolly on Times Square now. Because otherwise we don't have it. So you have to be ruthless there. So you have to have that perfect combination between being ruthless and compassionate, I think.
Are you positive about AI?
Yeah, I am. I'm scared of it too. I mean, I've seen Terminator, but I think that I use this AI as a secretary, which I think is great. I was writing this series set in the Atlas, actually, in Morocco, like True Detective in Atlas. And I wanted to know about what's the drug situation going on here. Who are the gangs? Who are the sellers? Had no idea. Go to AI, ask them, tell me what's going on. Boom, boom, boom. Then I get a direct ballroom Rambo figure about what's going on. And then you have to recheck all these things, of course, because AI is not reliable. But after you check these things, then that research would have taken me days. And first of all, finding the source would be very hard. So I use AI in that sense, like a great assistant, I mean.
Favorite thing to do on a day off?
I love when me and my partner, when we get in the car really early, go 2 hours somewhere north-south of London and go for a really long hike, ending up in the pub and have that first beer after a 6-hour long hike. That's heaven.
At the end of your email, you said to me, being a true optimist, my best work is yet to come. So after all of that, what's next?
Well, one of the things I'm really hoping for that I'm working together, it's an animated series. Again, trying to do things that I haven't done before. It's an animated series which is based on Nick Cave and a Swedish music songwriter, old punk artist called Thåström. And when I was in divorce, I could only listen to 2 artists, and that was Thåström and Cave. Those were the only ones. And then one day I woke up and I had dreamt about them being in a classroom together in the 70s in Sweden, in the suburb of Sweden. And the dream was in black and white. And I remember telling Tuppence this, and she said, that's the best fucking idea you had for a while for a series. So I wrote a TV series based on this. That was supposed to be an animated thing. And it turns out that it's about these 2, Cave and Thåström. They're in the world. They're 12 years old. They are like little philosophers trying to find a reason for love and life and what's the meaning of life, while also looking for cheap beer and how to get really drunk. And then this series turned into a feature, and that's the one I'm really hoping for now. That would be fun. If you look at my reminder list of my projects, I have 8 projects that are on the same level as could happen or could not. And I'm working as hard on all of them. But it's hard. It's hard to get things made, I think. You asked me earlier about advice, but maybe this is not advice. But I remember talking to, it was Lasse Hallström, a Swedish director who did a lot of American films. And he's a really, really nice director, I think. I remember him saying that you're never on the inside. You're always knocking on the door. That's true. You think sometimes that you will become there, but at the end of the day, you're always standing there with your hat in your hand and knocking on the door.
Well, I have just had the most incredible time watching these series and the films. And I get so lucky because normally you watch something and then you think, oh, I wonder what they were thinking about this. And I get to ask you. So thank you so, so much, Måns, for coming today and talking me through this. And thank you so much for giving me such a wonderful few weeks. I'm now going to be a bit lost when we get to the end of the bridge. So I don't know what to watch next.
There's a couple of more seasons, but they're not as good.
You've been listening to Bandwidth Conversations. Thanks to Anna B, Head of Marketing, to all of the podcast consultant, to Bagawire for the music, to the Money Maze podcast. Thank you for listening. Any feedback, please email me, katie@bandwidthconversations.com. Please sign up on our website, www.bandwidthconversations.com, so we can notify you about new podcast releases. We hope to see you again soon.